The moment she walked into that dining room with a baby on her hip, I knew someone's life was about to shatter. I just didn't know it would save mine. What happens when a single father on a blind date witnesses a young mother being fired in front of everyone? What he does next will leave you speechless. This is a story about dignity, second chances, and the courage to build love from broken pieces. Stay with me until the end. This journey will move you. And please, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let me take you back to where it all began. Daniel Brooks sat alone at table 17, trying not to check his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. The Sterling Oak Steakhouse hummed with the kind of quiet wealth that made him uncomfortable. Crystal glasses catching candlelight, leather booths the color of old money, servers moving like shadows between tables where conversations never rose above a murmur. He didn't belong here. Not anymore. The reservation had been made by his sister-in-law, Monica, who'd been on a mission to get him back out there ever since he'd mentioned, once in a moment of weakness at a family barbecue, that maybe Avery needed more than just a grieving father who still kept her mother's coffee mug on the counter. That confession had apparently been all Monica needed. Within a week, she'd set up this blind date with a lovely young woman from the hospital auxiliary, someone Monica swore was perfect for someone in your situation. Daniel hated that phrase. Your situation. As if widowhood was a condition that could be treated with the right prescription of forced social interaction and well-meaning setups. He'd almost canceled 3 times. The only reason he was sitting here now, tie feeling like a noose around his neck, was the memory of 7-year-old Avery watching him get ready with those serious dark eyes, so much like her mother's, and saying, "You look nice, Daddy. I hope she's nice too." The weight of that simple hope had gotten him into his truck and across town. Now he was regretting every mile. Around him, Austin's elite class performed their evening rituals. To his left, a couple in their 60s discussed their lake house renovation. To his right, 3 businessmen laughed over scotch that probably cost more than Daniel's truck payment. Everyone looked like they'd been born knowing which fork to use, which wine to order, how to exist in spaces where judgment wore expensive cologne. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, still damp from the shower he'd rushed through after leaving the Lopez job site, and wondered if he should just leave. His date was already 15 minutes late. That had to be a sign, right? The universe telling him this was a mistake, that he should go home, help Avery with her homework, maybe watch that animated movie she'd been asking about all week. He was reaching for his phone to text Monica an excuse when the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted. It was subtle at first, a pause in conversations, heads turning toward the kitchen entrance, the kind of collective attention that precedes either celebrity or catastrophe. Daniel looked up. A young woman had emerged from the kitchen, and everything about her screamed wrong place, wrong time. She was maybe mid-20s, dressed in the black pants and white shirt of the serving staff, but her outfit was disheveled, shirt partially untucked, hair escaping from what had probably been a neat ponytail that morning. But that wasn't what had stopped conversations. On her hip, she carried a toddler, maybe 18 months old, wearing a blue dinosaur shirt and tiny sneakers. The child was crying, that particular pitch of infant distress that seems designed by evolution to pierce through any ambient noise. The woman's face was flushed, her eyes red-rimmed. Even from across the dining room, Daniel could see her hands shaking. Following close behind her was a man in his 50s wearing a suit that probably cost more than Daniel's entire wardrobe. The restaurant manager, Daniel guessed from the way he carried himself. That particular blend of authority and carefully maintained composure. But that composure was cracking. "Lena, this is completely unacceptable." The manager's voice carried across the suddenly quiet dining room. He was trying to keep his tone professional, but fury bled through every syllable. "We've discussed this multiple times." "Mr. Patterson, I'm so sorry." The young woman, Lena, shifted the crying child, trying to soothe him while keeping her voice steady. "My babysitter canceled at the last minute. Her daughter has the flu and I couldn't find anyone else, and I thought if I kept him quiet in the break room, maybe—" "You thought you could bring an infant to one of Austin's premier dining establishments?" Patterson's face was reddening. "During our busiest service?" Every eye in the restaurant was locked on them now. Daniel saw a woman at a nearby table whisper something to her companion. A man in a $1,000 suit shook his head with visible disgust. Lena's arms tightened around her child. I know it's not ideal, but I didn't have a choice. I can't afford to miss a shift, and I thought, what you thought, Patterson interrupted, his voice rising despite his obvious efforts to control it, is that your personal problems are more important than the experience of our guests. Look around, Lena. Do you see any other employees treating this establishment like a daycare? The baby's crying intensified as if he could sense his mother's distress. Lena bounced him gently, tears now openly streaming down her face. Please, Mr. Patterson. Please, I'll work a double tomorrow. I'll take the worst shifts. I'll do anything. I need this job. What you need, Patterson said, his voice now cold enough to frost glass, is to learn professional boundaries. This is a place of business, not a charity. I'm sorry about your circumstances, but I can't run a restaurant this way. The silence in the room was absolute. Even the kitchen noise seemed to have stopped. Daniel's hands clenched around his napkin. He knew what was coming. Everyone in the room knew. You're fired, Lena. Effective immediately. The words hit like a physical blow. Lena actually swayed, and for a moment Daniel thought she might collapse. The baby, sensing something terrible in his mother's stillness, wailed louder. No. The word came out as a whisper. No, please, I have rent due. Mr. Patterson, please, I'll never... Security will escort you to collect your things. Patterson was already turning away, his duty discharged, the unpleasantness dealt with. I'm sorry it came to this. But he didn't sound sorry. He sounded relieved. And that's when something in Daniel Brooks broke open. He'd been watching this scene unfold with growing horror, his own discomfort at being in this restaurant transforming into something hotter, sharper. He'd seen the looks on the faces around him, the disgust, the judgment, the way people shifted in their seats as if poverty might be contagious. He'd seen the way they looked at this young woman like she was a problem to be removed, not a person in crisis. And suddenly he was back in a different hospital 3 years ago, being told that his wife hadn't survived the accident. He was back in his kitchen at 2 a.m, trying to figure out how to tell a 4-year-old that mommy wasn't coming home. He was back in every moment when the world had felt impossible, when he'd been drowning and no one had thrown him a rope because they were too busy maintaining the polite fiction that struggle was a personal failing. Something ancient and fierce rose in his chest, something that had been buried since Sarah died, smothered under responsibility and grief and the sheer exhausting weight of surviving. Daniel stood. The movement drew attention, head swiveling toward him like sunflowers tracking light. The businessman at the table beside him paused mid-sentence. The couple discussing their lake house went silent. Patterson had almost reached the kitchen door. Lena stood frozen in the middle of the dining room, clutching her crying child, looking like she'd been caught in a spotlight she'd never asked for. Daniel's chair scraped against the hardwood floor, a harsh sound in the crystalline silence. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice carrying across the room with the same authority he used on construction sites when heavy equipment was moving and lives depended on clear communication. "I think you're firing my date." Every head in the restaurant swiveled toward him. Patterson froze mid-step. And Lena, this young woman he'd never met, whose name he'd just learned in the worst possible context, turned to look at him with an expression of pure confusion. Daniel started walking. Each step felt significant, like he was crossing more than just a dining room floor. The businessmen watched him pass. The elderly couple stared openly. He heard whispers starting up in his wake, saw phones being subtly shifted into recording position. He didn't care. Patterson had turned back, his professional mask slipping to show irritation beneath. "I'm sorry, sir, but this doesn't concern..." "Her name is Lena Ortiz, right?" Daniel kept walking, his eyes fixed on the young woman who was staring at him like he'd materialized out of thin air. "I'm Daniel Brooks. We had a reservation for 7:30. He could see Lena's mind working, confusion giving way to something else. A desperate, wild hope that she was trying to suppress because hope, Daniel knew, could hurt worse than disappointment when you'd been knocked down often enough. She started, then stopped, looking between Daniel and Patterson. The manager had recovered his composure, his expression now tight with professional skepticism. "Mr. Brooks, I appreciate your gesture, but Lena is an employee here, not a guest. This is a personnel matter." "Was an employee," Daniel corrected, finally reaching Lena's side. Up close, he could see she was even younger than he'd thought, probably not yet 25. Her name tag was slightly crooked. There was a stain on her collar that looked like baby food. The child in her arms had stopped crying, distracted by this new presence, regarding Daniel with that solemn curiosity toddlers have. You fired her, which means she's free to leave with me. Sir, I really don't think... How much does she owe for the disruption? Daniel pulled out his wallet. To the restaurant. For the... what did you call it? The experience of your guests? Patterson's face went from red to purple. This isn't about money. Really? Because it seems like it's about exactly that. Daniel pulled out his credit card. How much for the meals that were disrupted? 100? 200? I'll cover whatever you think is fair compensation for the 30 seconds of crying that apparently destroyed everyone's evening. Around them, phones were definitely out now, recording openly. Daniel heard someone mutter, "Oh, this is getting good." A woman at a corner table had her hand pressed to her mouth, eyes wide. Lena was trembling beside him. The baby had grabbed a fistful of her shirt, watching the scene with big, uncertain eyes. "Mr. Brooks," Patterson said through gritted teeth, "I'm going to have to ask you to..." "To what? Leave?" "I was planning on it." Daniel handed his card to a wide-eyed server who'd materialized nearby. "Charge whatever's appropriate. My date and I are going somewhere that doesn't treat single mothers like criminals for having the audacity to be human." He turned to Lena, offering his hand. "If you want to leave, that is. No pressure, but I'm thinking the diner on 6th Street doesn't have a dress code, probably doesn't mind a little crying, and makes a pretty decent burger." For a moment, Lena just stared at him. Her eyes, dark brown, exhausted, full of 1,000 questions, searched his face like she was trying to find the trick, the catch, the inevitable moment when this gesture would transform into something else. Daniel knew that look. He'd worn it himself often enough in the year after Sarah died, when people offered help that came with invisible price tags. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why would you... We don't even know each other." "No," Daniel agreed, "but I've been where you are. Not exactly, but close enough. And someone helped me when I needed it. Maybe it's time I paid that forward." The baby made a small sound, reaching toward Daniel with one chubby hand. Without thinking, Daniel let the child grab his finger. The grip was surprisingly strong. "Hey there, buddy," he said softly. "Tough night, huh?" And something in Lena's face cracked. That careful wall she'd been holding against the world, the armor you build when you're tired of apologizing for existing. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay, yes. Please, let's go." Daniel turned back to Patterson, who looked like he was trying to decide whether to call security or just let this circus leave his restaurant. "We'll be going now. Thanks for the hospitality." The sarcasm wasn't subtle. Patterson's jaw worked, but he said nothing. What could he say? Daniel wasn't breaking any laws. Neither was Lena, not anymore. She no longer worked here. The server returned with Daniel's card and a receipt. He signed it, added a generous tip, none of this was the waitstaff's fault, and handed the receipt back. Then he offered his arm to Lena. She stared at it for a moment, this old-fashioned gesture in the middle of a very modern humiliation, then shifted the baby to one hip and threaded her free hand through Daniel's elbow. Together, they walked toward the exit. The dining room remained silent except for the quiet soundtrack playing over the speakers, something classical and tasteful that had probably been selected specifically to not intrude on the consciousness of people paying $40 for a steak. Daniel could feel every eye on them, could sense the phones tracking their progress, could imagine the social media posts already being composed, the hashtags being debated. But Lena held her head high. Her hand on his arm was trembling, but her spine was straight, her shoulders back. She'd been beaten down tonight, humiliated, fired, but she wasn't broken. Daniel respected the hell out of that. They reached the door. The hostess, a young woman who looked deeply uncomfortable with everything that had just transpired, held it open without a word. The November air hit them like a shock, cool and clean after the recycled atmosphere of the restaurant. The door swung shut behind them, cutting off the silence they left in their wake. And then they were on the sidewalk, Austin's lights spreading out around them, and Lena Ortiz collapsed. Not physically. She didn't fall. But everything she'd been holding together through sheer force of will seemed to give way all at once. Her hand slipped from Daniel's arm. She took 2 steps away from him, still holding her son, and just broke. "Oh God," she gasped. "Oh God, oh God, I just lost my job. How am I going to, rent's due in 4 days. I have $73 in my account, and The baby, sensing his mother's distress, started crying again. Lena bounced him automatically, the motion ingrained from months of practice, but her own tears were falling freely now. "I'm so sorry," she choked out, turning to Daniel. "I'm so sorry. I don't even know you. This isn't your problem. I shouldn't." "Hey." Daniel moved closer, keeping his movement slow and obvious, the way you would with a spooked animal. "Hey, it's okay. You're okay. I'm not okay." The words burst out of her. "I just got fired for being a mother, for not being able to afford a babysitter who doesn't cancel when her own kid gets sick, for being stupid enough to think that maybe if I was quiet enough, small enough, I wouldn't bother anyone, and..." She cut herself off, pressing a hand to her mouth, shoulders shaking. Daniel waited. He'd learned in the dark months after Sarah died that sometimes people needed to fall apart before they could come back together, that sometimes the kindest thing you could do was just stand there, be present, not try to fix it or minimize it or rush past it, let the grief exist. After a long moment, Lena's sobs quieted to hitching breaths. The baby had calmed too, resting his head on his mother's shoulder with the fluid acceptance of very young children who trust their caregivers even when those caregivers are visibly struggling. "I'm sorry," Lena said again, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "God, you must think I'm a complete disaster." "I think," Daniel said carefully, "that you're a mother who's been dealt a rough hand and is doing everything you can to keep your kids safe and fed. I think you're probably exhausted and scared and doing the best you can with what you've got." Lena looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. Her eyes were red and swollen, mascara smudged beneath them, but there was something sharp and assessing in her gaze now. "Why did you do that?" she asked quietly. "In there. Why would you claim I was your date when you could have just, I don't know, stayed out of it? Let me get fired quietly?" Daniel shrugged. "Didn't seem right. The way they were looking at you, like you'd committed some crime by being human and having responsibilities. But She glanced back at the restaurant, then at him. "Monica set you up, didn't she? Her sister-in-law? I was supposed to meet you. I got the call about the babysitter, and I panicked, and I forgot, and oh God, Monica's going to kill me." Something clicked in Daniel's mind. "Wait, you're the lovely woman from the hospital auxiliary? I volunteer at Dell Children's twice a month." Lena shifted the baby higher on her hip. "Monica coordinates the schedule. She mentioned a few weeks ago that she had a brother-in-law who was..." She stopped, bit her lip. "I'm sorry, that's probably not..." "A widower raising a kid alone?" Daniel finished. "Yeah, that's me. Daniel Brooks, contractor, father to one very opinionated 7-year-old girl who thinks I need to get out more." Despite everything, Lena's mouth twitched in something that might have been a smile if the night hadn't already crushed it. Lena Ortiz, former waitress, mother to one very cranky toddler who has terrible timing. This is Leo. Thought the baby had stuck his fingers in his mouth and was regarding Daniel with that same solemn curiosity. "Hey, Leo," Daniel said. Then to Lena, "Look, I know this whole night has been a disaster, but I meant what I said in there. There's a diner on 6th that makes great burgers, doesn't care if babies cry, and stays open late. And I don't know about you, but I'm starving. Monica made this reservation for 7:30, and I skipped lunch because the Lopez job ran late." Lena stared at him like he'd suggested they fly to the moon. "You want to actually have dinner? After all this?" "Why not? I got dressed up, drove across town, and we were supposed to meet anyway." Daniel checked his watch. "It's not even 8 yet, and unless you've got somewhere else to be..." The question hung in the air between them. Daniel watched emotions flicker across Lena's face, disbelief, suspicion, desperate hope, and finally, a kind of reckless surrender. "I have nowhere else to be," she admitted quietly. "No job to get back to. No babysitter to relieve. Just a studio apartment where the heat's been out for 3 days and my landlord won't return my calls. Then let's get you fed, Daniel said. Both of you, and maybe we can figure out what comes next. Lena looked down at Leo, who had apparently decided Daniel was acceptable and was now reaching for him again with both hands, making that particular sound toddlers make when they want to be held, somewhere between a demand and a question. He likes you, Lena said, surprise clear in her voice. Kids usually do. I think I smell like construction sites and patience. Works on 7-year-olds and apparently 18-month-olds too. Daniel held out his hands in an offering. You want me to take him while we walk? You look exhausted. And there it was again, that moment of assessment, of weighing trust against desperation. Daniel knew what Lena was seeing. A stranger in a rumpled dress shirt and loosened tie, 2 worn boots poking out from beneath dress pants, a man who'd inserted himself into her disaster and was now offering to carry the most precious thing in her world. Every instinct probably told her no, that this was too much, too fast, too strange. But exhaustion, Daniel had learned, has its own arithmetic. Sometimes you're just too tired to fight anymore. Okay, Lena whispered and carefully transferred Leo into Daniel's arms. The toddler settled against Daniel's chest like he'd been designed to fit there, his small head tucking under Daniel's chin. The weight was familiar. Avery had been this size not so long ago, though the years had passed faster than Daniel had ever imagined possible. He's usually shy with strangers, Lena said, wonder touching her voice. He doesn't usually just go to people. Maybe he knows we're on the same team, Daniel suggested. The sleep-deprived single parents trying to figure out club. Lena's laugh was short and sharp but genuine. Is that a club that meets? Only in diners at weird hours and pediatrician waiting rooms, Daniel said. Come on, I'm parked just down the street. They walked in silence for half a block, Lena keeping pace beside him while Leo's breathing gradually evened out against Daniel's shoulder. I can't believe this is happening, Lena finally said. Any of it. This whole night feels like, I don't even know, like someone else's life. Yeah, Daniel agreed. I've had a few of those, nights where everything you thought you knew just tips sideways. When your wife died? The question was direct, unflinching. Daniel appreciated that, the refusal to dance around the edges of grief like most people did, treating his widowerhood like a social landmine to be carefully avoided. Yeah. And after. There were a lot of nights where I'd look around and think, how did I get here? This wasn't the plan. He paused at his truck, a 10-year-old F-150 that had seen better days but ran like a dream. But you figure it out one day at a time, sometimes 1 hour at a time. Lena looked at the truck, then at him. You're really serious about this, about dinner. I don't generally offer to buy people burgers as a joke, Daniel said. Plus, look. He nodded to Leo, who had fully conked out, drooling slightly on Daniel's shoulder. I think Leo's already voted yes. That pulled another small smile from her, though her eyes remained wary. I don't have a car seat with me. I took the bus to work because my car died last week and I can't afford to fix it until I got paid, which is now not happening. Daniel considered this. The diner's only about 10 minutes from here. We can take it slow, keep him secure in your arms in the back seat, or there's a bus line that runs down 6th if you'd feel safer that way. You'd really take the bus with me? She gestured at his outfit. You're wearing a tie. It's a clip-on, Daniel admitted. I can't actually tie a real one. Haven't been able to since I was 12 and my dad tried to teach me for my uncle's wedding. Some skills just don't stick. He carefully unclipped the offending item and stuffed it in his pocket. Better? Lena was quiet for a long moment, studying him in the streetlight. Daniel let her look, understanding that she was making calculations that had nothing to do with convenience and everything to do with safety, with trust, with the 1,000 small risk assessments single mothers had to make every single day. Okay, she said finally. We'll go in your truck, slow, and if Leo wakes up and freaks out, we pull over. Deal. Daniel unlocked the vehicle, noting Lena's eyes tracking every movement as he carefully secured Leo in her arms in the back seat, then helped her with the seatbelt. He left both back doors slightly open until she nodded that she was ready, gave her control over when they were sealed in. Small things. But small things mattered when you were trying to feel safe in an unsafe world. He climbed into the driver's seat, adjusted the mirrors so Lena could see him and he could see her, and started the engine. The radio came on softly, some country station Avery liked. He turned it down lower. "Ready?" he asked. In the mirror, Lena's eyes met his. "Ready." They pulled into Austin's evening traffic, leaving the Sterling Oak Steakhouse and its crystalline judgment behind, heading toward a fluorescent-lit diner where nobody cared if you showed up in work clothes or couture, where crying babies were met with understanding smiles instead of contempt, where the coffee was terrible and plentiful, and the burgers came with fries that could cure a bad day. Neither of them knew it yet, but they were driving toward something that would reshape both their lives, toward honesty and struggle, and the kind of partnership that's built not on rescue but on recognition. But for now, they were just two exhausted parents navigating traffic, with one sleeping toddler and 1,000 unasked questions humming in the air between them. The night was far from over, and the real conversation was about to begin. The Starlight Diner sat on the corner of 6th and Lamar, like it had been there since Austin was still a small town instead of a sprawling tech hub, all chrome trim and neon signs promising breakfast served all day. Through the wide windows, Daniel could see scattered customers. A group of college students hunched over laptops, an elderly couple sharing a piece of pie, a waitress with pink streaks in her hair refilling coffee cups. He pulled into the parking lot and killed the engine. In the back seat, Lena was carefully extracting herself from around Leo, who had remained mercifully asleep through the entire drive. "Let me get the door," Daniel said, climbing out and moving around to help. The November air had gotten cooler, carrying that particular hill country chill that appeared after sunset and disappeared by mid-morning. Lena emerged from the truck with Leo cradled against her shoulder, moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned to do everything one-handed. Daniel noticed the way she automatically positioned herself between him and the baby. Subtle, instinctive protection. "I probably should have asked earlier," she said as they crossed the parking lot, "but you're not some kind of serial killer, right? Monica vetted you?" Despite the tension of the night, Daniel found himself smiling. "Monica's known me for 12 years. I married her husband's sister. I coach Little League on Saturdays, and I've never gotten a speeding ticket. Best I can offer for references on short notice." "That's actually pretty good," Lena admitted. "Most of my first dates don't include a public firing and grand gesture rescue." "Most of mine don't either. This is new territory for both of us." The diner's warmth hit them as Daniel held the door open, along with the smell of coffee and frying bacon. The pink-haired waitress looked up from behind the counter and smiled, a real smile, not the professional courtesy mask the Sterling Oak staff had worn. "Sit anywhere, hun," she called. "Menus are on the tables." They chose a booth near the back, away from the other customers. Daniel slid into one side while Lena carefully arranged herself and Leo on the opposite bench, positioning the sleeping toddler between her body and the wall. The menus were laminated and slightly sticky, advertising everything from chicken fried steak to Greek salads with the kind of optimistic ambition only diners possessed. Daniel already knew what he wanted. The same thing he always ordered on the rare occasions he ended up here. Mushroom Swiss burger, extra pickles, fries. Lena stared at her menu like it was written in a foreign language. "You okay?" Daniel asked. "I'm trying to calculate what I can afford," she said quietly. "Because I really appreciate this, but I can't let you pay for—" "Lena," Daniel waited until she looked up. "I'm buying you dinner. That's not up for negotiation. You just lost your job because you're a parent. The least I can do is feed you." Her jaw tightened. "I don't need charity." "Good thing this isn't charity then. It's a date. A weird disaster of a date that started in the worst possible way, but Monica set this up and I'm following through. If the situation was reversed, if I'd been the one fired and humiliated, would you buy me a burger?" Lena considered this, her finger tracing an absent pattern on the table's surface. "Yeah, probably." "Then let me do the same. No strings, no debt, no obligation beyond maybe eventually telling Monica this story because she's going to absolutely lose her mind when she finds out what happened." That pulled a genuine laugh from Lena, surprising them both. "Oh God, Monica, she's going to feel so guilty for setting me up at that restaurant." "She picked it because she thought it was impressive," Daniel said. which, fair enough, it probably is if you like that sort of thing. I felt like I was going to break something expensive just by breathing wrong. I worked there for 8 months and never felt comfortable, Lena admitted. The other servers were nice enough, but the customers, they'd snap their fingers to get your attention. Snap, like you were a dog. She shook her head. The tips were good, though. Better than anywhere else I could get hired without a degree. I thought if I could just tough it out another year, save enough to finish school. She trailed off, staring at the sleeping form of her son. The waitress arrived then, order pad ready. "What can I get you folks?" Daniel ordered his usual. Lena hesitated, then asked for a grilled cheese and tomato soup, the cheapest entree on the menu. Daniel caught her eye. "And the chicken club sandwich," he added, "with the loaded fries for the lady." I said grilled cheese. "You need actual food," Daniel said firmly. "When's the last time you ate a real meal?" Lena opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. "Yesterday morning, I had toast." "Grilled cheese and the chicken club," Daniel confirmed to the waitress, who was trying very hard not to look like she was listening to a domestic dispute. "And bring some crackers if you have them, for when the little guy wakes up." "Sure thing, hun." The waitress collected the menus and disappeared. Lena was glaring at him, but there was no real heat in it. "You're very bossy for a first date." "I have a 7-year-old who thinks vegetables are a suggestion. Bossy is kind of required in the job description." Daniel leaned back against the booth's cracked vinyl. "So, teaching degree?" "Early childhood education. I'm 3 semesters away from finishing." Lena's hand drifted to Leo's back, that constant checking motion all parents did. "I was taking classes at ACC before Leo came along. Then I had to drop out for a year because newborns and coursework don't mix well. I went back part-time last spring, but between tuition and childcare and rent..." She shrugged. "Working at the Sterling Oak was supposed to help me catch up. Clearly that didn't work out." "What made you want to teach?" "My 3rd-grade teacher, Mrs. Chen. I was in foster care at the time. Nothing dramatic. My mom had some substance abuse issues and the state stepped in for a while. I was angry and scared and acting out, and Mrs. Chen she saw past all that. She made me feel like I mattered, like I could be more than my circumstances." Lena's voice softened. "I want to do that for other kids. Be the person who sees them." Daniel nodded slowly. "That's a good reason." "What about you? How does someone become a contractor?" "Necessity, mostly. I was working construction to pay for college, figured I'd get an engineering degree, maybe design buildings instead of making them. Then Sarah got pregnant with Avery, and priorities shifted. The construction work paid better than anything else I was qualified for, and I was pretty good at it." He traced a finger through the condensation on his water glass. "After Sarah died, I couldn't keep working for someone else. Couldn't handle a boss telling me I couldn't leave when Avery's school called, or that grief wasn't a good enough reason to miss a deadline. So I got licensed, started my own company. It's small, just me and 2 guys I hire for the bigger jobs. But it's mine. I set the hours. If Avery needs me, I go." "That must be hard, running a business alone with a kid." "Some days are worse than others, but we figure it out." Daniel paused. "Sarah's parents help when they can. Monica and her husband take Avery sometimes. There's a whole network of people who showed up after the funeral and just stayed. I didn't ask for it, didn't know how to accept it at first, but they wore me down." Lena was quiet for a moment. "I don't have that. A network. Leo's father bailed when I was 4 months pregnant. My mom's been clean for 3 years now, which is great, but she's in Corpus Christi working at a hotel and barely keeping her own head above water. I've got one friend from high school who babysits when she can, but she's got 3 kids of her own and works nights at HEB. She looked down at her hands. It's just us. Me and Leo. We're all we've got." The loneliness in those words hit Daniel square in the chest. He knew that isolation, had lived in it for months after Sarah died when everyone's casseroles ran out and the condolence calls stopped coming. But he'd had family, had resources, had a house that was paid off, and savings that could buffer him through the worst of it. Lena had none of that. Just herself and an 18-month-old and $73 in her bank account. "What's your plan?" he asked. "For tomorrow, next week." Lena laughed, bitter and sharp. "Plan? I'm going to wake up tomorrow and apply to every restaurant, retail store, and cleaning service in Austin. I'm going to beg my landlord for an extension on rent. I'm going to hope the food bank is open and that Leo doesn't get sick because I can't afford the copay at the clinic. She met his eyes. That's my plan. Survival. Same as it's been since the day Leo was born. The waitress returned with their food, setting plates down with the kind of practiced efficiency that came from years of navigating emotional conversations in booth seating. The chicken club was huge, overflowing with bacon and tomato. The grilled cheese sat beside it, smaller but golden and perfect. Anything else right now? The waitress asked. We're good, Daniel said. Thanks. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Daniel watched Lena take small, careful bites of the grilled cheese, like she was rationing it, before he pushed the loaded fries toward her side of the table. Eat, he said. Please, you're going to need energy for all that applying tomorrow. Lena stared at the fries, then at him. Why are you being so nice to me? Why wouldn't I be? Because people aren't. Not usually, not without wanting something. She picked up a fry, examining it like it might contain hidden obligations. In my experience, kindness comes with price tags. Daniel set down his burger. 3 years ago, about a month after Sarah died, I was at the grocery store with Avery. She was 4 and having a complete meltdown in the cereal aisle because I'd picked the wrong box. Apparently, there's a difference between regular Cheerios and Honey Nut Cheerios that is extremely important to 4-year-olds. I was exhausted, barely holding it together, trying not to cry in public. And this older woman, complete stranger, she came over and she said, Honey, you look like you could use a break. Then she just started talking to Avery about the cereals, asking her opinion, turning the whole thing into a game. 5 minutes later, Avery was calm. We had the right cereal, and I hadn't had a breakdown in the middle of HEB. He took a sip of water. I tried to thank the woman and she said, Someone helped me when my husband died and I had 3 kids under 5. Just pass it on when you can. Then she left. I never even got her name. Lena was very still, a French fry halfway to her mouth. I don't have an agenda here, Daniel continued. I'm not trying to get anything from you. I saw someone having the worst night of their life, and I had the ability to make it slightly less terrible. That's it. That's the whole story. And if I can't pay it forward, if I stay broke and struggling and barely making it, then you stay broke and struggling and barely making it, and maybe someday when you're in a better place, you help someone else. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you've got too much on your plate, and that's okay too. He picked up his burger again. There's no test here, Lena. No expectations. Just dinner. She studied him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression, guard coming down, walls lowering inch by careful inch. Then she ate the French fry, and then another, and soon she was pulling the chicken club toward herself and taking a real bite, not rationing anymore. They ate, and slowly, conversation found its footing. Lena told him about Leo's obsession with trucks, how he'd point at every vehicle on the street and make engine noises. Daniel told her about Avery's current phase of only wearing purple, which meant laundry had become a negotiation about whether her 2 purple shirts were clean enough for another wearing. She told him about her disastrous attempt to make homemade baby food that had somehow resulted in sweet potato on the ceiling. He told her about the time he'd let Avery help paint her bedroom, and they'd both ended up covered in more paint than the walls. Small stories, parent stories, the kind of mundane details that made up a life. Leo woke up about halfway through the meal, blinking sleepily before focusing on his surroundings. His face started to scrunch up in pre-cry confusion before Lena scooped him into her lap and the waitress appeared with the crackers Daniel had requested. Hey, sweet boy, Lena murmured, kissing his forehead. You hungry? Leo took the cracker, examining it seriously before taking a careful bite. His eyes landed on Daniel and he stared, processing this new person with the kind of intense focus toddlers bring to everything. That's Daniel, Lena said. Can you say hi? Leo stuck the cracker in his mouth and waved one hand, a gesture that might have been greeting or dismissal. He's not big on strangers usually, Lena said, but he seems okay with you. Animals and small children trust me. It's adults I have trouble with. Daniel pulled a funny face at Leo, crossing his eyes. The toddler giggled, a sound like bells. There we go. I won Avery over the same way. Turns out dignity is overrated when you're trying to make a kid laugh. They finished eating while Leo worked through his crackers, occasionally offering soggy pieces to his mother with the generosity of someone who believed in sharing food. The diner hummed around them, dishes clattering, conversations rising and falling, the jukebox in the corner playing something twangy and old. It felt normal, comfortable, like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. When the check came, Daniel paid it over Lena's protests. The waitress brought back his card with a smile and pocketed the tip with a quiet, "You folks have a good night now." Outside, the temperature had dropped further. Lena shivered in her thin work shirt, pulling Leo closer. Daniel shrugged out of his jacket without thinking and draped it over her shoulders. "I can't." "You can, and you will. It's November, and you're in short sleeves." He unlocked the truck. "Where am I taking you? Home?" Lena's face did something complicated. "I live over in Riverside. The apartments off Burton Drive. The ones with the broken sign out front." Daniel knew the complex. He'd done some repair work for the property management company a few years back before they'd decided his quotes were too expensive and hired someone cheaper. The buildings were run down, the kind of place where maintenance requests went unanswered and security deposits never got returned. "That's a rough area," he said carefully. "It's what I can afford. Barely." Lena was looking anywhere but at him. "I know it's not great, but the bus line runs nearby and there's a playground where Leo can play during the day." Daniel made a decision that probably qualified as overstepping, but felt necessary anyway. "It's after 9. Let me drive you home. Make sure you get inside safe." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to. Humor me?" Lena sighed, but climbed into the back seat with Leo. "Fine, but just to the door. I don't need you seeing inside or anything." The drive to Riverside took 20 minutes through Austin's nighttime traffic. Daniel kept the radio low, playing a soft rock station that filled the silence without demanding attention. In the back seat, Lena was quiet, probably doing the math on her situation, adding up impossible numbers and coming up short. The apartment complex was worse than Daniel remembered. Half the exterior lights were out, casting long shadows across cracked asphalt. A shopping cart sat abandoned near the dumpsters. Someone had spray-painted something on the building's side, though the words were too faded to read. "It's the second building," Lena said quietly. "Third floor. You can just drop us at the stairs." Daniel pulled up to the building, but didn't unlock the doors immediately. "Lena, can I ask you something?" She tensed. "What?" "When's your rent due?" 4 days. "Why? How much are you short?" Her hands tightened around Leo. "I'm not taking money from you." "That's not what I asked." "Daniel, how much?" She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, barely audible, $600. "I have first months and the deposit saved for a cheaper place, but I can't move until next month because everywhere requires notice, and I was waiting for my next paycheck to give it." A bitter laugh. "Which is now not coming." $600. Daniel's entire profit margin on the Lopez job. Money he'd been planning to use to replace his work boots and maybe take Avery to that trampoline park she'd been asking about. But there was a woman in his truck who'd just lost everything because she'd had the audacity to be a mother. There was an 18-month-old who didn't understand why mommy was scared. There was a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. "I'll write you a check," he said. "No." "Lena, no." Her voice was hard now, sharp with pride and pain. "I don't know you. We had one dinner. You can't just... People don't just give $600 to strangers." "I'm not a stranger anymore. We've shared terrible restaurant experiences and diner food. That's practically friendship." He turned to look at her in the rear-view mirror. "And I'm not giving it to you. I'm lending it. You pay me back when you can. No interest, no timeline, no pressure." "I can't." "You can't or you won't?" "Both." Lena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You don't understand. If I take money from you, that makes me someone who takes money from men I barely know. That makes me desperate and weak and—" "It makes you human," Daniel interrupted. "It makes you someone who's been backed into a corner and is accepting help from someone who can afford to give it. That's not weakness. That's survival." "Easy for you to say. You're not the one accepting charity." "You're right. But I am the one who's been in a position where pride almost cost me everything. Daniel's voice softened. 6 months after Sarah died, I ran out of money. Just completely tapped out. Funeral costs, hospital bills, taking time off work. It all added up. I had a house payment due and about $30 in checking, and Sarah's dad offered to help, and I said no. Because taking money meant I'd failed, meant I couldn't provide for my daughter on my own. He paused, remembering that awful conversation in his kitchen, the way shame had tasted like copper. You know what my father-in-law said? He said, Daniel, there's no nobility in drowning when someone's offering you a rope. Take the help, get back on your feet, and someday help someone else. That's how family works. That's how community works. We catch each other. Lena was crying now, silent tears tracking down her cheeks while Leo dozed against her shoulder, oblivious. I'm not asking you to be grateful or indebted or anything else, Daniel continued. I'm offering you a rope. That's all. A chance to keep your apartment, keep Leo safe, keep moving forward. You don't owe me anything except the money itself, whenever you can manage it. Could be next month, could be next year. I don't care. Why would you do this? Why would you risk $600 on someone you just met? Because 3 years ago, someone helped me when I needed it. Because I was where you are. Maybe not exactly, but close enough. Because I have a daughter who's warm and fed tonight, and you have a son who deserves the same security, and I can make that happen. He met her eyes in the mirror. And because if our situations were reversed, I think you'd do the same for me. Lena pressed a hand to her mouth, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Leo stirred against her, making a small sound of concern, and she immediately pulled herself together, wiping her eyes and making soothing noises. Okay, she whispered finally. Okay, but I'm paying you back, every cent. I don't care how long it takes. Deal. Daniel pulled out his wallet, extracting a business card and a pen. He wrote his cell number on the back. This has my office number and my cell. I'll bring you a check tomorrow. Is early afternoon okay? Around 1? I'll be here. Applying to jobs. She took the card, staring at it like it might vanish. Daniel, I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep going, keep fighting for Leo, for yourself, for that teaching degree. That's all I want. She nodded, unable to speak. Daniel unlocked the doors, and Lena climbed out with Leo, Daniel's jacket still draped over her shoulders. She turned back, silhouetted against the building's failing lights. Monica was right, she said. You are a good man. Monica talks too much, Daniel replied, but he smiled. Go on, get inside. Text me that you made it okay. I don't have your number. It's on the card, save it. Lena looked at the card again, then at him, then nodded. She headed for the stairs, climbing carefully while balancing Leo. Daniel waited, watching until she reached the third-floor landing and disappeared into what he assumed was her apartment. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed. Unknown number, we're inside. Thank you. For everything. Daniel saved the contact, Lena Ortiz, and pulled out of the parking lot, heading back across town to the small house in Hyde Park, where Avery would be asleep in her purple-painted room, watched over by Monica, who'd probably fallen asleep on the couch, waiting for him to come home and report on the date. He had a lot to tell her. But as he drove through Austin's night, Daniel wasn't thinking about explanations or justifications. He was thinking about the look on Lena's face when she'd realized he was serious about helping. The way she'd held herself together through everything, the humiliation, the firing, the fear, until she'd finally let herself break in the safety of his truck. He was thinking about Leo's small hand waving at him, about crackers shared and stories told over diner food, about the strange alchemy that happens when two people who should be strangers recognize something essential in each other. He was thinking that maybe Monica had been right to set up this date after all, just not in the way anyone expected. Monica was indeed asleep on the couch when Daniel got home, but she woke the instant his key turned in the lock. She sat up, pushing her dark hair out of her face, blinking in the lamplight. Well, she said, before he'd even closed the door. How was it? Did you like her? Did she like you? Please tell me you didn't spend the whole night talking about construction materials. Daniel hung his keys on the hook by the door and kicked off his boots. I got her fired, took her to a diner, and loaned her $600 for rent, so I'd say it went differently than you planned. Monica's mouth fell open. You what? Over the next 20 minutes, Daniel told her everything while she sat on his couch making increasingly dramatic expressions of shock and sympathy. When he finished, she was crying. That poor girl, she whispered. I had no idea things were that bad for her. She always seemed so put together at the hospital, so capable. I never thought... She stopped, wiping her eyes. You did a good thing, Daniel. Sarah would be proud. The mention of his late wife sent the familiar ache through Daniel's chest, but it was gentler now than it had been. 3 years had dulled the sharpest edges of grief, left him with something he could carry instead of something that crushed him. I don't know about that, he said. I just did what felt right. That's exactly what Sarah would have done. Monica stood, gathering her purse and jacket. Tom's probably wondering where I am, but Daniel? Don't let this girl disappear. She needs people, and I think maybe you need people too. After she left, Daniel checked on Avery, who was sprawled across her bed in purple pajamas, her dark hair fanned across the pillow. She looked so much like Sarah in that moment that Daniel had to lean against the doorframe and just breathe through it. 7 years old, growing up so fast. Soon she'd be a teenager, then an adult, and these moments of her being small enough to tuck in would be gone forever. He pulled her blanket up, kissed her forehead, and went to his own room where sleep didn't come for a long time. The next afternoon, Daniel showed up at Lena's apartment complex at exactly 1 o'clock, check in hand. He'd spent the morning on the Lopez job finishing up the deck repairs, his mind only half on the work. The other half kept replaying last night. Lena's face when she'd been fired, the weight of Leo in his arms, the desperate pride in her voice when she'd tried to refuse help. The third-floor landing smelled like cooking grease and cigarette smoke. Daniel found apartment 317 and knocked. Lena opened the door still wearing his jacket over a different shirt than last night. Her eyes were red-rimmed like she'd been crying, but she'd clearly made an effort. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and she'd put on makeup that didn't quite hide the exhaustion underneath. Hi, she said, stepping back to let him in. Come in, but fair warning, it's not much. The apartment was a studio, maybe 400 square feet total. A kitchenette occupied one corner, a bathroom door stood ajar in another, and the rest of the space was divided between a sagging double bed and a small area where Leo's playpen sat surrounded by scattered toys. The walls were thin enough that Daniel could hear a television playing in the next unit. The heating vent rattled but produced no warmth, but the space was immaculately clean. Not a dish in the sink, toys organized in plastic bins, the bed made with hospital corners. It was the kind of clean that came from having nothing and taking fierce pride in maintaining what little you had. It's home, Lena said, that defensive note creeping into her voice. I know it's not... It's fine, Daniel interrupted. Better than my first place after I moved out of my parents' house. I had roommates who thought dishes were optional and hygiene was a suggestion. That pulled a small smile from her. Leo was in the playpen, pushing a toy truck back and forth and making engine noises. When he saw Daniel, he stood up, bouncing excitedly. Truck, he announced, holding up the toy. That's a good truck, Daniel agreed, moving closer. Does it go fast? Leo nodded seriously and demonstrated by pushing the truck across the playpen floor with enough force to crash it into the opposite side. Then he laughed, delighted by the destruction. He's been doing that all morning, Lena said. Everything is a truck. The remote is a truck. His banana at breakfast was a truck. I'm raising a very specific kind of weirdo. Avery went through a phase where everything was a princess. I had to call her Princess Avery for 3 months or she'd refuse to respond. Daniel pulled out the check he'd written that morning. Here, this should cover rent and leave you a little extra for groceries. Lena took it like it might bite her, staring at the amount. It's for $700. You need to eat, so does Leo. Daniel, Lena. He kept his voice gentle but firm. Let me do this. Please. She folded the check carefully and tucked it into her pocket, then took off his jacket and handed it back. I should return this. Thank you for letting me borrow it. Keep it if you need it. Your coat situation looks pretty minimal. I have a coat. It's just... She glanced at the closet door. It's got a broken zipper and I've been meaning to fix it, but I haven't had time. Of course she had a broken coat. Daniel added that to the growing list of things about Lena's situation that made him want to fix something, anything. Listen, he said, an idea forming that was probably overstepping but felt right anyway. I know you need to look for work, but if you're interested, I could use help at my business. Administrative stuff mostly, scheduling jobs, ordering materials, handling invoices. Nothing complicated, but it needs doing, and I've been putting it off because I hate paperwork. Lena's eyes narrowed. Is this a real job or a pity job? It's a real job that I'm offering to someone I think would be good at it. You worked at the Sterling Oak for 8 months without getting fired until last night. That takes organization and people skills, both of which I need. He paused. Pays $15 an hour, flexible schedule, and you can bring Leo. My office is basically a garage I converted, so there's space for him to play while you work. $15 an hour? Lena's voice went very quiet. That's more than the restaurant paid. That's what the job's worth. And before you ask, yes, I can afford it. Business has been good. I just expanded to take on bigger projects, which means more administrative work that I don't have time for. It wasn't entirely true. Daniel had been managing fine on his own, but it wasn't entirely false either. He really did hate paperwork, and having someone to handle the scheduling would free him up for actual construction work. And if that someone happened to be a single mother who desperately needed stable income and could bring her kid to work, well, that just made good sense. Lena was very still, processing. What if I'm terrible at it? Then we figure it out together. I'm not looking for perfect. I'm looking for reliable. He met her eyes. And I think you're about as reliable as they come. She laughed, short and sharp. You don't know me well enough to know that. I know you showed up to a job you hated for 8 months because your kid needed to eat. I know you're 3 semesters from a degree you're fighting like hell to finish. I know you didn't abandon your son or give up when things got hard. Daniel shrugged. That's reliable enough for me. Lena turned away, arms wrapped around herself. When she spoke, her voice was thick. Why are you doing this? And don't say it's just paying it forward or helping someone who needs it. There's got to be more to it than that. Daniel considered this, really considered it. Why was he doing this? It would be easy to say it was altruism, that he was just a nice guy helping someone in need, but that wasn't the whole truth. Avery asked me last week if she was ever going to have a mom again, he said quietly. She sees her friends with their parents, sees families at the park, at school events, and she asked if it was always going to be just us. He saw Lena's shoulders tense. I told her I didn't know, he continued, that maybe someday I'd meet someone, or maybe it would just be us forever, and both of those things were okay. But the truth is, I've been alone for 3 years and I've forgotten how to connect with people who aren't 7 years old or asking me for construction quotes. Daniel moved to the window, looking out at the parking lot below. Last night at that restaurant, watching you get torn apart in front of everyone, I felt something I haven't felt in a long time. Anger. Real anger, not just frustration or exhaustion. And then I felt useful, like maybe I could actually help someone instead of just surviving from one day to the next. He turned back to her. So yes, I'm helping you. But maybe you're helping me too, reminding me that there's more to life than work and parenting and trying not to drown, that I can still be the kind of person who shows up for people. Lena was crying again, silent tears that she didn't bother to wipe away. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Monica said you were kind and steady and good with your daughter. I guess I thought you'd be boring, safe. She laughed wetly. You're not boring. I'll take that as a compliment. Daniel smiled. So, the job. You interested? Can I think about it? Of course, but I need an answer by Monday. I've got a big project starting Tuesday, and I really do need the help. Lena nodded, wiping her eyes. Okay, Monday. I'll let you know. They stood in awkward silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. Then Leo called out, "Truck!" again, and the spell broke. Daniel left shortly after, promising to text her his office address in case she decided to take the job. As he drove away, he caught a glimpse of her in his rearview mirror, standing on the third-floor landing with his check in her pocket and uncertainty written across her face. He hoped she'd say yes. She texted him Sunday night, "I'll take the job. What time Monday?" Monday morning, Lena showed up at Daniel's office/garage at 8:30, Leo on her hip and a backpack full of toys and snacks. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, looking nervous and determined in equal measure. "You're early," Daniel said, opening the side door to let them in. "I'm always early. Being late makes me anxious." She looked around the space, half garage, half office, with a desk piled with invoices and a filing cabinet that looked like it hadn't been organized since the Bush administration. "Oh, wow. You weren't kidding about the paperwork." "I might have downplayed exactly how behind I am." Daniel cleared a space on the floor and put down the foam play mat he'd borrowed from Monica. "This okay for Leo?" "That's perfect." Lena set Leo down, and he immediately began exploring, picking up scattered tools and examining them with intense toddler focus. "Nothing sharp down here," Daniel assured her. "I cleared it all last night. Worst he'll find is some sandpaper, and even that's the fine grit stuff." They spent the morning going through Daniel's disaster of a filing system, while Leo played contentedly on the mat, occasionally bringing them tools to admire. Lena had a natural organizational mind, quickly sorting invoices by date and creating a system that actually made sense. "How have you been running a business like this?" she asked, staring at a pile of receipts that dated back 6 months. "Poorly, very poorly." Daniel handed her another stack. "I'm good at building things. Administrative work makes me want to fake my own death and move to Canada." "That's dramatic." "You haven't seen my tax situation yet. That'll come later when you trust me more." Lena laughed, and the sound filled the garage space with something bright. Leo looked up at his mother's laughter and grinned, showing his tiny teeth. They fell into an easy rhythm. Lena worked through the paperwork while Daniel explained his current projects and upcoming jobs. She asked smart questions about scheduling and materials, making notes in a spiral notebook she'd brought. When Leo got fussy, she'd take a break to feed him a snack or read him a book, and Daniel would use those moments to actually respond to emails he'd been ignoring. It worked. Surprisingly, impossibly, it worked. By lunch, Lena had organized 3 months of invoices and created a digital filing system on Daniel's computer. Leo had taken a nap on the playmat, and Daniel had finished all his quotes for the week. "You're really good at this," Daniel said, watching her input data with efficient keystrokes. "I like organizing things. It makes sense. Unlike people." She glanced at him. "No offense." "None taken. People are complicated." They ordered sandwiches from the deli down the street and ate while Leo toddled around the garage, still obsessed with anything that rolled. Daniel found himself telling her about the Ramirez job that had gone sideways when they discovered asbestos in the walls, and Lena told him about a particularly awful shift at the Sterling Oak, when a customer had sent back his steak 4 times before admitting he'd wanted chicken all along. It felt normal, like they'd been working together for months instead of hours. The week passed in similar fashion. Lena showed up every morning at 8:30, Leo in tow, and transformed Daniel's administrative chaos into something resembling a functional system. She scheduled his jobs, organized his materials orders, and even started handling some of the customer calls because she had a way of talking to people that made them feel heard. Daniel found himself looking forward to mornings, to the sound of Lena's car pulling up. She'd managed to get her vehicle fixed with part of her first paycheck, and Leo's excited greeting when they came through the door. Avery met them on Thursday when she had a half day at school. Daniel had been worried about how his daughter would react to suddenly having people in their space, but Avery took one look at Leo and declared him adorable, and spent the afternoon teaching him how to stack blocks while Lena worked. "She's pretty," Avery told Daniel later when Lena had taken Leo to the bathroom. "Is she your girlfriend?" "She's my employee," Daniel corrected, "and my friend." "Can friends become girlfriends?" "Sometimes, but that's not what this is." Avery gave him a look that was far too knowing for 7. "If you say so, Daddy." But it wasn't like that. Daniel was careful to keep things professional, to maintain boundaries. Lena was vulnerable, rebuilding her life, and the last thing she needed was her boss making things complicated. Except it was already complicated because somewhere between Monday and Friday, between shared sandwiches and watching Leo grow comfortable enough to fall asleep on Daniel's office couch, something had shifted. He looked forward to her opinions on his projects. She started texting him funny things Leo did on weekends. They developed inside jokes and a shorthand that came from spending 8 hours a day in close proximity. It felt like the beginning of something, but Daniel couldn't name what. Then Saturday happened. Daniel had taken Avery to the park near Zilker, the one with the good playground and the trail around the lake. They'd been there about an hour when he spotted Lena and Leo near the swings. "That's Daniel!" Avery shouted, running toward them before he could stop her. Lena turned, surprised, then smiled. "Hey, fancy meeting you here." "Small city," Daniel said, catching up to his daughter. "Or maybe just small worlds for people with kids." They ended up spending the afternoon together, Avery and Leo becoming instant friends despite the age gap. Avery pushed Leo on the baby swing while Lena and Daniel sat on a nearby bench watching their kids play. "This is nice," Lena said quietly. "Normal. I haven't felt normal in a long time." "Yeah," Daniel agreed. "Me neither." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only happens when two people have stopped trying to impress each other and started just existing together. "Can I ask you something?" Lena said after a while. "Sure." "Do you ever feel guilty about being happy again?" The question hit deeper than Daniel expected. He thought about Sarah, about the way her absence had defined his life for so long, about the months when happiness felt like a betrayal. "Every day," he admitted. "For the first year, anytime I laughed or enjoyed something, I'd feel like I was forgetting her, like being happy meant she didn't matter anymore." "Well, how did you get past it?" "I'm not sure I did. I just started letting the happy moments exist without interrogating them to death. Sarah loved life. She loved joy. I don't think she'd want me to spend the rest of my existence being miserable." He paused. "What about you, Leo's father? Do you feel guilty about moving on?" Lena's laugh was bitter. "Marcus didn't die. He just decided being a father was too hard and walked away. So no, I don't feel guilty. I feel angry, but that's a different thing. Anger's valid. So is guilt, I guess." She watched Leo giggle as Avery made faces at him. "I just don't want to feel broken forever, you know? I want to be whole again, or maybe whole for the first time. I'm not sure I ever was before." Daniel understood that more than he could articulate, the feeling of being fractured, of wondering if the pieces would ever fit back together right. They stayed until the sun started setting, the kids reluctant to leave. Walking back to their cars, Avery held Lena's hand on one side and Daniel's on the other, chattering about something that had happened at school. Leo dozed in Lena's arms, worn out from playing. It felt like a family. The thought terrified Daniel. That night, after Avery was asleep, he sat on his back porch and called Monica. "I think I'm in trouble," he said when she answered. "What kind of trouble?" "The Lena kind." Monica was quiet for a moment. "You have feelings for her." "I don't know. Maybe. Probably." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "We spent the afternoon at the park, and it felt so natural, like we'd been doing it forever. And I keep thinking about her when I should be working, and I look forward to Monday mornings, Monica." "Who looks forward to Mondays?" "People who are falling for their employees, apparently." Monica's voice was gentle. "What are you going to do about it?" "Nothing. She's rebuilding her life. She needs stability, not her boss developing feelings. Has it occurred to you that maybe she has feelings too?" "That's not... We're friends. She works for me. It would be completely inappropriate." "Daniel," Monica cut him off. "Sarah's been gone for 3 years. You're allowed to move on. You're allowed to be happy. And Lena is a wonderful person who clearly cares about you." "You don't know that." "I've seen the way she looks at you when you're not watching. Trust me, I know." After they hung up, Daniel sat in the darkness thinking about Lena's smile, about the way Leo had fallen asleep in his arms that first night, about the feeling of Avery holding Lena's hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. Maybe Monica was right, or maybe Daniel was just lonely and mistaking gratitude for something more. He didn't know. But he was about to find out, because Sunday evening Sarah's parents called and everything fell apart. Robert and Catherine Mitchell had always been kind to Daniel, even after their daughter died. They'd helped with Avery, brought groceries when he couldn't manage the store, sat with him through the worst of the grief. They were good people who'd lost their only child and were trying to maintain connection to the granddaughter who was all they had left of Sarah, which made the conversation that Sunday evening so much worse. "We need to talk about this woman," Catherine said without preamble when Daniel answered the phone. Her voice was tight, controlled in that way that meant she was furious but trying not to show it. Daniel's stomach dropped. What woman? Don't play games, Daniel. Monica told Tom. Tom told us. You're dating someone. Someone with a child. Someone you gave money to and then gave a job. Catherine's voice cracked slightly. Someone you took Avery to meet at the park. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Because from where we're sitting, it looks like you're replacing Sarah. Replacing our daughter with some struggling single mother who probably sees you as a meal ticket. The words hit like a physical blow. Daniel gripped the phone tighter, trying to keep his voice level. Catherine, I understand you're upset, but that's not fair. Lena isn't... Lena, Catherine said the name like it tasted bad. You're on a first-name basis. How long has this been going on? There's nothing going on. She works for me. She needed help, and I was in a position to help her. That's it. Is it? Robert's voice came on the line now, deeper and harder than Catherine's. Because we drove by your office yesterday. Saw her car there. Saw her carrying a child inside. This is where you work, Daniel, where you're supposed to be focused on providing for Avery, not playing savior to some stranger. Daniel felt anger rising hot in his chest. She's not a stranger, and she's excellent at her job. My business has never been better organized. I'm sure it hasn't. Catherine was back, her words dripping with implication. Young, pretty, grateful, very convenient. Stop. Daniel's voice came out harder than intended. Just stop. You don't know what you're talking about. We know you're introducing Avery to this woman, our granddaughter, Sarah's daughter. Catherine was crying now. How could you, Daniel? It's only been 3 years. 3 years and you're already moving on like Sarah never mattered. That's not what's happening. Then what is happening? Robert demanded. Explain it to us. Make it make sense why you're suddenly spending your weekends at parks with another woman and her child while our daughter is barely cold in the ground. The cruelty of it, the deliberate cruelty, took Daniel's breath away. She's been gone 3 years, Robert. She's not in the ground anymore. She's in a columbarium that I visit every month with flowers that Avery picks out. Don't you dare suggest I've forgotten her. But you have moved on, haven't you? It wasn't a question. And that was the thing that made Daniel pause, made the anger drain out and leave something heavier behind. Because maybe they were right. Maybe he had moved on. Maybe the feelings he was developing for Lena, the way his world had gotten brighter in the past 2 weeks, the way Avery had started smiling more, maybe all of that meant he was leaving Sarah behind. I'm trying to live, Daniel said quietly. That's all. I'm trying to be something other than a grieving widower for my daughter's sake. For my own sake. And this Lena is part of that? Catherine asked. I don't know. Maybe. She's a good person who needed help. That's what Sarah would have done. Helped someone who needed it. Sarah would have had better judgment than to bring a stranger into Avery's life. Robert's voice was cold now. We're concerned, Daniel, very concerned, and we think it might be time to revisit the custody arrangement. Everything stopped. The world narrowed to those words, custody arrangement. What are you talking about? Daniel's voice came out strangled. We're talking about what's best for Avery, Catherine said, and now she just sounded tired. You're clearly going through something, making questionable decisions. We think perhaps Avery should spend more time with us while you sort yourself out. You're threatening to take my daughter. The words felt unreal even as Daniel said them. We're suggesting a temporary adjustment for Avery's well-being. Robert's tone had shifted to something formal, legal. We've already spoken to an attorney just to understand our options. The phone nearly slipped from Daniel's hand. You can't be serious. We're very serious. Our granddaughter shouldn't be exposed to your midlife crisis or whatever this is. She deserves stability. She has stability. She has me. She has her home, her school, her friends. And now she has this Lena person and her child, a woman you barely know. Catherine's voice broke again. Please, Daniel, please think about what you're doing. Think about Sarah. Think about what she would want. Sarah would want me to be happy, Daniel said, the words coming out fierce and certain. She would want Avery to see me living, not just surviving. She would want me to help people who need it. That's who she was. Don't tell us who our daughter was. Robert's voice was dangerous now. We knew her for 28 years. You had her for 6. The line went dead. Daniel stood in his kitchen, phone still pressed to his ear, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath him. They'd threatened to take Avery. His in-laws, who he'd trusted, who he'd loved, had just threatened to take his daughter because he'd helped someone. Because he'd maybe started to care about someone. His hands were shaking when he set the phone down. Through the doorway, he could see Avery's backpack hanging on its hook, her shoes kicked off by the door, all the small evidences of the life they'd built together. The idea of that being disrupted, of losing her even temporarily. He couldn't breathe. Daniel made it to the back porch before the panic attack hit fully, his chest tight and vision swimming. He gripped the railing and forced himself to count breaths the way the grief counselor had taught him 3 years ago. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Slowly the world came back into focus. He needed to talk to Lena. Needed to... what? Warn her? Apologize? He didn't even know. But this affected her too, whether she knew it or not. If Sarah's parents were going to make trouble, Lena deserved to know. Daniel pulled out his phone and texted, "Can we talk?" Something came up. The response came almost immediately. "Is everything okay?" "Not really. Can I call you?" His phone rang 10 seconds later. "What happened?" Lena's voice was tight with concern. Daniel told her everything. The conversation with Catherine and Robert, the accusations, the threat about custody. As he talked, he heard Lena's breathing change, heard the moment she understood what this meant. "They think I'm using you," she said when he finished. "They think I'm some kind of gold digger. They don't know you. They're just scared and grieving and looking for someone to blame. They're blaming me for you moving on." Lena's voice went very quiet. "This is my fault. I shouldn't have taken the job, shouldn't have. We shouldn't have gone to the park together. I've made everything complicated." "No," Daniel said it firmly. "This is not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm the one who offered you the job, who suggested the park. You were just living your life. A life that's now threatening your custody of your daughter." He heard something rustling on her end, movement. "I should quit, distance myself. If I'm not around, they can't use me against you." "Lena, don't. What else am I supposed to do, Daniel? Let you lose Avery because you were kind to me? I can't. I won't be responsible for that. You're not responsible. They are. They're the ones making threats." But even as he said it, Daniel felt the trap closing. Because Lena was right. The easiest solution, the one that would make all this go away, was for her to leave. To take the job and the friendship and whatever else was developing between them and just disappear. The thought of it made something in his chest crack. "I need to think," Lena said. "I need to... I'm going to go. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm so sorry." "Wait." But she'd already hung up. Daniel tried calling back 3 times. Every call went to voicemail. He texted, "Please don't do anything rash, let's talk about this," but got no response. He barely slept that night, his mind running through scenarios. Lawyers and custody battles, and Avery being torn between families. Lena disappearing from their lives, taking Leo with her, leaving a gap that Daniel hadn't even known existed 2 weeks ago. Monday morning, Lena didn't show up at 8:30. By 9, Daniel was pacing. By 9:30, he was calling her phone again. Still voicemail. At 10, he broke down and drove to her apartment. The building looked even more depressing in daylight, all its flaws visible without the forgiving cover of darkness. Daniel took the stairs 2 at a time, his heart hammering. He knocked on 317. No answer. Knocked again. Harder. "Lena? It's Daniel. Please, if you're in there, just talk to me." The door to 319 opened and an elderly woman poked her head out. "You looking for the girl with the baby?" "Yes. Have you seen her?" "Saw her leave real early this morning. Had suitcases. Looked like she was crying." The woman studied Daniel with sharp eyes. "You the boyfriend?" We're friends. Did she say where she was going?" "Didn't say nothing to me. Just loaded up that beat-up car of hers and drove off." The woman's expression softened slightly. "She in some kind of trouble?" "I don't know," Daniel said honestly. "I'm trying to find out." He tried Lena's phone again from the parking lot. This time, it didn't even ring, just went straight to voicemail like it had been turned off. Panic was setting in now, real and cold. Lena had run, packed up Leo and whatever belongings she had and just left. Because of him. Because helping her had put her in the crosshairs of his mess. Daniel drove back to his office in a daze, his mind spinning. He needed to find her, needed to explain that they could figure this out, that she didn't have to disappear. But how did you find someone who clearly didn't want to be found? He was sitting at his desk, staring at nothing, when his phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Daniel Brooks? A woman's voice, professional and unfamiliar. Yes. Who's this? My name is Jennifer Martinez. I'm calling from Monica Garcia's office. She asked me to reach out to you. I understand you're looking for Lena Ortiz? Hope flared. You know where she is? Not exactly, but Monica thought you should know that Lena called the hospital this morning and resigned from her volunteer position. She said she was leaving Austin, didn't say where she was going. The hope died. Did she seem okay? Honestly, she sounded pretty upset. Monica's worried about her. A pause. Monica also wanted me to tell you that she talked to Tom, and Tom is going to talk to his parents. She's trying to smooth things over. Tell her thank you, but I don't think that's going to fix this. After hanging up, Daniel sat in the silence of his garage office. The filing system Lena had created sat neat and organized on his desk. The playmat where Leo had napped was still on the floor, a forgotten toy truck beside it. She'd been here less than 2 weeks and somehow made herself essential. And now she was gone. Daniel picked up the toy truck, turning it over in his hands. He thought about Leo's face when he demonstrated how fast it could go, about the pure joy in that destruction, about Lena's laugh when she'd called her son a specific kind of weirdo. He thought about the park, about Avery holding Lena's hand, about the way it had felt like family, and he thought about Catherine's words, "You're replacing Sarah," and wondered if maybe that had been the problem all along. Not that he was moving on, but that he'd been trying so hard not to that he'd forgotten how to actually live. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I'm sorry. You and Avery deserve better than the mess I bring. Thank you for everything. Take care of yourself. L. Daniel stared at the message, reading it over and over. The finality in those words. The goodbye. He typed back immediately. Where are you? Please just talk to me. We can figure this out. The message showed as delivered but not read. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Nothing. She was really gone. Daniel closed his office early and went to pick up Avery from school. She climbed into the truck chattering about art class, about the painting she'd made of a purple dragon, about how her friend Emma had shared cookies at lunch. Is Lena coming over today? She asked as they drove home. I wanted to show her my dragon. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Not today, sweetie. Tomorrow? I don't know. Something in his voice made Avery go quiet. She studied him with those two observant eyes. Did something happen? Is Lena okay? She had to go away for a while. Why? How did you explain this to a 7-year-old? How did you say that sometimes good people got hurt because of circumstances beyond anyone's control, that kindness could have consequences, that the world was complicated and unfair? Sometimes grown-ups have things they need to figure out, Daniel said carefully. Lena has some stuff going on and she needed some space. Is it because of us? Because we met her at the park? The question was too perceptive, too close to the truth. Why would you think that? Grandma Catherine called yesterday when you were outside. She talked to me. Avery was staring at her hands now, picking at a loose thread on her backpack. She asked if I liked Lena, if I thought Lena was trying to be my new mom. Daniel's vision went red around the edges. What did you tell her? I said Lena was nice and Leo was fun to play with. I said she wasn't trying to be my mom. She was just your friend. Avery's voice got smaller. Did I say something wrong? No, baby. You said exactly the right thing. Daniel pulled into their driveway and turned to face his daughter. Grandma Catherine is sad because she misses your mom. Sometimes when people are sad, they say things that don't come out right. Are you sad too? Yeah, I am. Avery unbuckled her seatbelt and climbed into the front seat, wrapping her small arms around Daniel's neck. It's okay to be sad. Mrs. Chen says sadness is just love with nowhere to go. Daniel held his daughter and tried not to fall apart completely. Mrs. Chen sounds pretty smart. That night, after Avery was asleep, Daniel sat on his back porch and thought about what came next. He could fight his in-laws if they really tried for custody, could probably win given that he was Avery's father and had been her primary caregiver for 3 years. But the fight itself would damage things, would hurt everyone involved. Or he could try to smooth things over, reassure Catherine and Robert that nothing was changing, that he wasn't replacing Sarah. Could promise to keep his distance from Lena, to focus solely on Avery and work. Could go back to surviving instead of living. The thought made him sick. Daniel pulled out his phone and opened his messages with Lena. The last one still showed as delivered but unread. He typed anyway. I don't know if you're reading these, but I need you to know something. Meeting you wasn't a mistake. Helping you wasn't a mistake. The past 2 weeks haven't been a mistake. You didn't make my life complicated. You made it better. You made it feel like there was more to existence than just getting through the day. He paused, then kept typing. My in-laws are wrong about you. They're scared and hurting, and they lashed out. But that doesn't make what they said true. You're not using me. You're not a burden. You're someone who's been dealt a terrible hand and is fighting like hell to build something good anyway. That's not weakness. That's strength. Another pause. His thumbs hovered over the screen. I miss you. Avery misses you. And I know you're trying to protect us by leaving, but running doesn't solve anything. It just means we're all alone in our separate corners instead of figuring this out together. He hit send before he could overthink it. The message showed as delivered. Minutes passed, then hours. Daniel fell asleep on the couch, waiting for a response that never came. Tuesday morning brought a text from Monica. Tom talked to his parents. They're willing to back off the custody thing if you promise to be more careful about who you introduce to Avery. I told them they were being ridiculous, but it's the best I could do. Daniel stared at the message. Be more careful. Code for stay away from Lena. His phone rang. Robert Mitchell. Daniel. The older man's voice was stiff. Catherine and I have been talking. We may have overreacted Sunday night. May have? We're worried about Avery, you understand that. I do, but threatening to take her wasn't the answer. No, it wasn't. Robert sighed, and suddenly he sounded every one of his 68 years. We miss Sarah, every day, and watching you move forward feels like losing her all over again. I'm not trying to erase her. I know that. Intellectually, I know that, but the heart doesn't always listen to the head. A long pause. If you want to see this Lena person, that's your business. We shouldn't have interfered. But please, be careful with Avery. She's already lost one parent. She can't handle losing another. I would never hurt Avery. I know, I'm sorry we suggested otherwise. Robert cleared his throat. Catherine wants to talk to you. Can we come by this weekend? Yeah, that's fine. After they hung up, Daniel sat with the phone in his hand. His in-laws were backing down. The crisis was over. He could breathe again. Except Lena was still gone. And without her, the victory felt hollow. Daniel spent the next 3 days trying to work, trying to focus on Avery, trying to pretend that everything was fine. But the garage office felt empty without Lena's presence. The filing system she'd created mocked him every time he looked at it. The invoices piled up because he couldn't bring himself to touch the organizational structure she'd built. Friday evening, he was sitting in his truck outside Avery's school, waiting for her drama club to finish, when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Daniel, it's Lena. His heart stopped. Where are you? Are you okay? Is Leo? We're fine. We're in Corpus Christi with my mom. Her voice sounded small and far away. I'm sorry I ran. I panicked. The idea of you losing Avery because of me, that's not going to happen. My in-laws backed off. It's fine. Is it? Lena was quiet for a moment. Because from what Monica told me, they're only backing off if you stay away from me. Daniel closed his eyes. Of course Monica had tracked Lena down. Of course she'd told her everything. They said to be careful who I introduced to Avery. They didn't specifically say stay away from you. Daniel. Okay, yes, That's what they meant, but I don't care what they meant. They don't get to dictate my life. They're Sarah's parents. They're Avery's grandparents. You can't just ignore them. I'm not ignoring them, but I'm also not letting them control who I spend time with. He gripped the phone tighter. Come back, please. We'll figure this out together. I can't. Why not? Because I don't belong in your world, Daniel. I'm a broke single mother working on a teaching degree I might never finish. You're an established contractor with a daughter and in-laws and a whole life that was fine before I showed up and made it complicated. My life wasn't fine. It was empty. The words came out harsh, desperate. I was going through the motions, work and parenting, and trying not to drown. You didn't complicate things. You made me remember what it felt like to actually want to wake up in the morning. Lena made a sound that might have been a sob. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're kind and strong and you love your son more than anything. I know you make me laugh and you're brilliant at organizing chaos and Avery lights up when you're around. I know that the past 2 weeks have been the best I've felt since Sarah died. And that scares me, but it also feels right. He took a breath. I know that I'm falling for you, and I think you might be falling for me too, and we could keep running from that, or we could face it together. The silence on the other end stretched so long Daniel thought she'd hung up. I'm scared, Lena finally whispered. Me too. What if it doesn't work? What if we try this and it falls apart and everyone gets hurt? What if it does work? What if we build something good? Daniel watched parents starting to arrive for pickup, saw the first kids trickling out of the building. I can't promise everything will be perfect, but I can promise I'll show up. I can promise honest and steady and doing my best. That's all I've got. Another long silence. Then, I need time to think, to figure out if I'm brave enough for this. How much time? I don't know, a week, 2? I need to make sure I'm doing this for the right reasons, not just because I'm desperate and you're kind and I'm so tired of being alone. It wasn't the answer Daniel wanted, but it was honest, and he could respect honest. Okay, take your time. But Lena, I'm not going anywhere. Whenever you're ready, I'm here. Thank you, she breathed, for everything. For seeing me when I felt invisible. For helping when you didn't have to. For making me believe I might deserve good things. You do deserve good things, Daniel said fiercely. Never doubt that. They said goodbye, and Daniel sat in his truck feeling like he'd just run a marathon. She hadn't said yes, but she hadn't said no either. She'd asked for time, and that was something he could give. Avery emerged from the building then, waving when she spotted the truck. She climbed in, chattering about the play they were rehearsing, about her role as a singing flower, about how she needed a purple costume because flowers could definitely be purple if they wanted to be. Daniel drove them home, half listening to his daughter's endless stream of conversation, the other half of his mind in Corpus Christi with a woman who'd turned his world sideways in less than 3 weeks. He didn't know what came next, but for the first time in 3 years, he was willing to find out. The week that followed felt longer than the entire 3 years since Sarah's death. Daniel went through the motions, work, parenting, the endless small tasks that made up a life. But everything felt muted, like he was watching his existence from behind glass. He hired a temp to handle the administrative work, a retired accountant named Helen, who was efficient and professional and absolutely nothing like Lena. She organized his files and answered his phone calls and never once made him laugh or left toys scattered on the floor or transformed his sterile garage office into something that felt alive. Avery asked about Lena every day for the first 3 days, then seemed to sense that the topic made her father sad and stopped asking. But Daniel caught her looking at the toy truck Leo had left behind, the one that still sat on the shelf where Daniel had placed it like a talisman. Catherine and Robert came over on Saturday as promised. The conversation was stilted and awkward, both of them apologizing in the careful way of people who weren't used to being wrong. They took Avery to the park, and when they brought her back, Catherine hugged Daniel tightly. I'm sorry, she said into his shoulder. I'm sorry we made everything harder. We just miss her so much. I know, Daniel replied. I miss her too. And he did. He missed Sarah every day, in small ways and large. Missed her laugh and her terrible singing and the way she'd always known exactly what to say when he was spiraling. But he'd learned that missing someone and being paralyzed by their absence were different things. That love didn't have to end when life did. He just wished he could make Catherine and Robert understand that moving forward wasn't the same as leaving Sarah behind. Monday came and went with no word from Lena. Tuesday brought a brief text. Still thinking. Hope you and Avery are okay. Daniel responded, We're managing. Take all the time you need. But privately, he was starting to worry that time wasn't going to change anything. That Lena would stay in Corpus Christi with her mother, would find a job there, would build a new life that didn't include him. And he'd go back to his previous existence, safe and stable and crushingly lonely. Wednesday afternoon, Daniel was finishing up a deck repair in Westlake when his phone rang. Monica. Have you heard from her? She asked without preamble. One text, nothing substantial. Daniel wiped sweat from his forehead, squinting in the afternoon sun. Why? Have you? She called me this morning, wanted to know if the volunteer position at the hospital was still available if she came back. Daniel's heart jumped. What did you tell her? That of course it was. And then I asked her what was really going on. Monica paused. She's scared, Daniel, terrified. She told me she's never had anything good that didn't get taken away eventually. Her father left when she was 6. Her mother struggled with addiction. She bounced through foster care. Leo's father abandoned them. The job at the Sterling Oak fell apart. Every time she starts to build something, it crumbles. So she's waiting for this to crumble too, Daniel said quietly. Exactly. She thinks it's inevitable, that she doesn't get happy endings because people like her don't get those. Monica's voice softened. I tried to tell her that wasn't true, that she deserved good things. But I don't think she believed me. Daniel thought about Lena's face that first night, the way she'd looked when he'd offered to buy her dinner, like she was waiting for the catch, the hidden price. The way she'd insisted on paying him back for the rent money, refused charity, held on to her pride like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She'd been abandoned so many times she'd learned to leave first. What do I do? He asked. I don't know. But whatever you do, do it soon, because she's looking at apartments down there. I think she's planning to stay. After they hung up, Daniel stood on the half-finished deck, staring at nothing. He thought about all the things he wanted to say to Lena, all the arguments he could make for why she should come back. But arguments weren't what she needed. She needed proof. She needed someone to show up, not just with words, but with actions. She needed someone to choose her, consistently and without reservation. Daniel pulled out his phone and called Helen. I need to take a few days off, family emergency. Can you reschedule the Martinez job for next week? Of course, Helen said without question. Everything all right? It will be, Daniel said, hoping it was true. His next call was to Monica. Can you watch Avery for a couple days? I need to go to Corpus Christi. About time, Monica said, and he could hear her smiling. Bring her over whenever you're ready. But Daniel picked up Avery from school early, claiming a dentist appointment she didn't have. In the truck, he turned to face his daughter. I need to talk to you about something important, he said. Avery's eyes went wide. Am I in trouble? No, baby. Nothing like that. Daniel took a breath. You know how Lena went away to think about some things? Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about going to see her, to talk to her, to tell her that we want her to come back. He watched his daughter's face carefully. But I need to know how you feel about that, about Lena, about the possibility of her being in our lives more. Avery was quiet for a long moment, her small face serious. Do you love her? The question was so direct it took Daniel's breath away. I think I might. Is that okay? Does she love you? I don't know. Maybe. That's part of what I need to find out. Avery played with the zipper on her backpack, thinking. I miss Mommy, she said finally. Every day. And sometimes I'm scared I'm going to forget what she looked like, or what her voice sounded like, even though we have pictures and videos. Me too, Daniel admitted. But Lena's nice, and Leo's fun, and you smile more when they're around. Avery looked up at him with those impossibly wise eyes. Mrs. Chen says our hearts can hold lots of love at the same time. We don't have to throw away love for Mommy to make room for love for someone else. Daniel's throat tightened. Mrs. Chen is a very smart lady. So if you love Lena, that's okay. It doesn't mean you don't love Mommy anymore. Avery reached over and took his hand. And if Lena comes back, I'd be happy. Because you'd be happy. And maybe Leo could teach me more Spanish words. He knows truck in Spanish. Daniel pulled his daughter into a hug, pressing his face into her hair. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise, Avery said matter-of-factly. You're just slow at noticing. They drove to Monica's house, where Avery packed a bag for a few days with the kind of dramatic flair only a 7-year-old could muster. Monica pulled Daniel aside while Avery was choosing which stuffed animals were essential for her stay. You're doing the right thing, she said. Am I? Or am I just being selfish, pushing for something she's clearly not ready for? You're showing up. That's what people who've been abandoned need to see. That someone will actually show up. Monica squeezed his arm. Now go, and don't come back without her. Daniel drove to Corpus Christi that night, the 4-hour journey passing in a blur of highway lights and late-night radio. He'd texted Lena, I'm coming to see you. Tomorrow. Please don't run. But hadn't waited for a response before leaving. He got to the coastal city around midnight and checked into a cheap motel near the bay. Sleep didn't come easy, his mind running through every possible version of the conversation ahead. What if she told him to leave? What if she'd already made up her mind to stay? What if he was too late? Morning came gray and overcast, typical for November on the Gulf Coast. Daniel showered, changed into clean clothes, and sat in his truck in the motel parking lot staring at his phone. He'd asked Monica for Lena's mother's address, claimed he needed to send Lena her final paycheck. It felt dishonest, but sometimes you had to bend the truth to get where you needed to be. The address led him to a small house in a working-class neighborhood, the kind of place where people kept their yards neat despite having limited resources. A compact car sat in the driveway, Lena's. He recognized it from the office. Daniel sat in his truck for a full 5 minutes, gathering courage. Then he got out and knocked on the door. An older woman answered, probably in her early 50s, but looking older, with dark hair streaked with gray and eyes the same shape as Lena's. She studied him with open suspicion. Can I help you? Mrs. Ortiz, I'm Daniel Brooks. I'm here to see Lena. Recognition flashed across her face. You're the one she's been crying about. I hope not, Daniel said. But yeah, probably. Mrs. Ortiz looked him up and down, assessing. She told me what you did, helping her after she got fired, giving her money, giving her a job. Her voice hardened. She also told me about your in-laws threatening to take your kid. That why you're here? To tell her to stay away? No, ma'am. I'm here to ask her to come back. Why would she do that? So she can be the reason you lose your daughter? That's not going to happen. My in-laws backed off. Daniel met her eyes steadily. I'm here because I care about your daughter, because she ran before we could figure out what this is between us, because I think she's scared of being happy, and I want to show her she doesn't have to be. Mrs. Ortiz studied him for a long moment. Then she stepped back, opening the door wider. She's in the back with Leo, playing in the yard. She paused. You hurt her? I don't care how nice you seem. I'll come to Austin and make you regret it. Understood, Daniel said. He walked through the small, neat house, past evidence of a life being carefully rebuilt, AA medallions on a shelf, inspirational quotes on the fridge, photos of Leo at various ages. Through the back window, he could see Lena sitting on the grass with her son, helping him stack blocks that he immediately knocked down with gleeful destruction. Daniel stepped out onto the small patio. Lena looked up, and her face went through a series of expressions: shock, confusion, hope, fear, before settling on something guarded. What are you doing here? She asked, not standing. You said you needed time to think. I'm giving you something to think about. Daniel moved closer, stopping a few feet away. Can we talk? Lena glanced at Leo, who was now examining Daniel with the intense focus of an 18-month-old trying to place a familiar face. Leo, sweetie, can you play with your blocks while Mommy talks to Daniel? The toddler seemed to consider this, then went back to his blocks. Lena stood, brushing grass from her jeans, and gestured toward the far corner of the yard where a weathered picnic table sat under a live oak. They sat across from each other, the table between them like a barrier. You drove 4 hours, Lena said. I would have driven 40 if that's what it took. Daniel, let me say this. Please. He leaned forward. You ran because you're scared. Because every time you've built something good, it's been taken away. Because you think this is going to fall apart like everything else. And I get that. I understand being terrified of losing something you care about. Lena's hands were clasped tightly on the table, knuckles white. But here's the thing, Daniel continued. You left, and it didn't make anything better. I'm still here, still feeling the same way. Avery still asks about you. Your absence didn't solve the problem. It just meant we were all miserable in different cities. Your in-laws are dealing with their own grief in unhealthy ways, but that's not your responsibility to fix. That's mine. He reached across the table, not quite touching her hands, but close. They backed off the custody threat. Catherine apologized. Are things perfect? No. Will there be awkward dinners and complicated conversations? Absolutely. But that's life. That's what happens when you care about people. It gets messy and complicated and sometimes painful. I don't know how to do complicated, Lena whispered. I only know how to survive, how to keep my head down and make it through one day at a time. I don't know how to build something real with someone. Then we'll figure it out together, both of us. Because I don't have all the answers either. Daniel's voice was rough with emotion. I lost my wife 3 years ago. I've been so focused on not drowning that I forgot how to swim. You reminded me. You made me want to do more than just survive. Lena's eyes were bright with tears. What if I'm not enough? What if you realize I'm just a mess and you've made a mistake? What if you are enough? What if this works and we build something good? He echoed his words from their phone call, but this time he was here, in person, where she could see his face and know he meant every word. I'm not asking for perfect. I'm asking for honest. For you to show up and be yourself and let me show up too. I'm scared, she breathed. Me too. Terrified, actually. Daniel managed a small smile, but I'm more scared of spending the rest of my life wondering what if. What if I'd fought harder? What if I'd shown up and told you the truth? What if I'd been brave enough to try? Lena was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to do this, how to let someone in, how to trust that you won't leave. Start small, come back to Austin, take your job back. Let's just spend time together, no pressure, no expectations. Let's see what happens when we stop running from this. He finally let his hand cover hers. I'm not going to leave, Lena. I'm not Leo's father or your foster families or anyone else who walked away. I'm here. I drove 4 hours to tell you that, and I'll keep showing up every day until you believe it. She turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. What about Avery? What did she say? She said her heart has room for lots of love. That loving you doesn't mean we love her mom any less. Daniel's voice cracked. She said she'd be happy if you came back. Because I'd be happy. Lena made a sound between a laugh and a sob. She's a really special kid. She is. And she misses Leo. Apparently he was teaching her Spanish. He knows 3 words in Spanish. Truck, more, and mama. Well, she was very impressed. Daniel squeezed her hand. Come back, please. Not because you owe me anything, not because you need the job, but because you want to, because this thing between us deserves a chance. Lena looked across the yard to where Leo was still playing, then back at Daniel. I have a semester left of school. I registered for spring classes down here. Transfer to Austin Community College. They have an excellent early childhood education program. My mom, she's doing well, but she's still fragile. I worry about leaving her alone. Corpus is 4 hours away. We'll visit, or she can come stay with us sometimes. Whatever works. He paused. I'm not asking you to abandon your life here. I'm asking you to build a new one with me in Austin. Your mom, your school, Leo's needs. We'll figure out all of it, together. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's probably going to be the hardest thing either of us has ever done, but I think it's worth it. Daniel brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently. You're worth it. Lena closed her eyes, more tears escaping. When she opened them again, something had shifted in her expression. The fear was still there, but so was something else. Hope, maybe, or courage. Okay, she whispered. Okay? Okay, I'll come back. I'll try. She gripped his hand tighter. But you have to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that if this doesn't work, if we realize we're better as friends or it's too complicated or whatever, promise me we'll be honest about it, that we won't drag it out and make it worse. Her voice shook. I can't handle another drawn-out ending. I need clean and honest, even if it hurts. I promise, Daniel said solemnly. Complete honesty, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. They sat there for a long moment, hands joined across the weathered picnic table, the November wind carrying the salt smell of the Gulf. Leo had abandoned his blocks and was toddling over, making grabby hands at Daniel. Truck man, he announced. Daniel laughed, scooping the toddler into his lap. Yeah, buddy, truck man came back. Leo seemed satisfied with this explanation and settled against Daniel's chest, sticking his thumb in his mouth. He missed you too, Lena said softly. Kept asking where you were. I didn't know how to explain that I'd run away from something good because I was too scared to believe it was real. You can explain when he's older. Right now, he just needs to know we're here. Daniel adjusted Leo in his arms. When can you come back? I need a few days to pack, to talk to my mom, to withdraw from classes here. Lena wiped her eyes. End of the week? Saturday? I'll drive back Friday night. Help you pack. We can drive back together Saturday. You don't have to. I want to. I'm not letting you make that drive alone with all your stuff and a toddler. He smiled. Besides, this way I get a few extra hours with you. Lena's answering smile was tremulous but genuine. Okay, Friday night. Mrs. Ortiz appeared in the doorway then, arms crossed. Everything okay out here? Yeah, Mama. Lena stood, went to her mother. I'm going back to Austin, with Daniel. Her mother's expression was complicated, worry and hope and residual suspicion all mixed together. You sure about this, mija? No, but I'm going to try anyway. Lena hugged her mother tightly. You taught me that scared and brave aren't opposites, that sometimes the bravest thing is doing something even when you're terrified. Mrs. Ortiz looked at Daniel over her daughter's shoulder, her expression fierce. You take care of them, both of them, or you answer to me. Yes, ma'am, Daniel said, meaning it absolutely. He stayed for lunch, a simple meal of sandwiches and fruit that felt momentous, because he was sitting at a table with Lena and her mother and Leo, being integrated into the small family unit they'd created. Mrs. Ortiz grilled him with questions about his business, about Avery, about his intentions, and Daniel answered honestly, holding nothing back. By the time he left that afternoon, Mrs. Ortiz had softened slightly, though she still watched him with the protective wariness of a mother who'd seen her daughter hurt too many times. Daniel drove back to Austin with his heart lighter than it had been in days. He called Monica from the road. She's coming back, he said when she answered. I knew it, Monica was practically shouting. I knew you could convince her. When? Saturday. I'm going back Friday to help her pack. He paused. Monica? Thank you. For everything. For setting up the date, for tracking her down, for believing this could work. That's what family does, Monica said simply. We show up. Now get home and tell Avery the good news. Avery's reaction was exactly what Daniel expected. She shrieked with joy, jumped on the couch despite house rules, and immediately started planning what she wanted to show Leo when he came back. She insisted on making a welcome home banner that was more glitter than paper. The rest of the week crawled by. Daniel worked through his jobs with renewed energy, getting everything finished or delegated so he could take the weekend off guilt-free. He cleaned the house, bought groceries, and tried not to think too hard about what came next. Friday evening, he drove back to Corpus Christi, arriving at Mrs. Ortiz's house just as the sun was setting. Lena met him at the door, and the hug she pulled him into was tight and desperate and full of unspoken promises. They spent the evening packing her sparse belongings, clothes that fit in 3 suitcases, Leo's toys and books, a few kitchen items, photographs. Everything she owned in the world fit in the back of her car and Daniel's truck. Travel light, Lena said when she saw Daniel's expression. It's easier to run when you don't have much to carry. You're not running anymore, Daniel said firmly. And if you need stuff, we'll get you stuff. Furniture, kitchen things, whatever. You're building a life, not preparing for the next escape. Saturday morning, Mrs. Ortiz cried when they left, hugging Lena so tight Daniel worried she might not let go. But finally they were on the road, Lena's car following Daniel's truck, Leo secured in his car seat with a new toy Daniel had brought. The drive back felt different from all the other times Daniel had made this journey. This time, he was bringing something precious with him. This time, he was moving towards something instead of away from it. They arrived in Austin mid-afternoon. Daniel had arranged for Lena to rent the garage apartment behind Monica's house, small but infinitely better than the studio in Riverside, and Monica had offered it at a rate Lena could actually afford with her job at Daniel's office. "It's not charity," Monica said when she showed Lena the space. "It's been empty for months, and I hate having it sit unused. You'd actually be doing me a favor." Lena looked at Daniel, and he could see her making the calculation, trying to figure out if this was pity or genuine. He nodded slightly. "Trust," his expression said. "Try to trust." "Okay," Lena said. "Thank you. This is perfect." They spent the rest of the afternoon moving her in, Monica and Tom helping haul boxes while Avery entertained Leo. It felt right, this gathering of people who'd decided to show up and help, this makeshift family they were building from grief and hope and sheer stubborn determination. That night, after everything was unpacked and Avery was asleep and Leo was tucked into his new room, Daniel and Lena sat on the small patio behind her apartment. The Austin skyline glowed in the distance. "I can't believe I'm really here," Lena said quietly, "that I actually came back." "I can," Daniel replied. "You're braver than you think. Or stupider." But she was smiling. "Maybe both." He took her hand. "So, what now?" "Now we take it slow. We figure out what this is. We don't rush." She looked at him. "And we're honest. About everything." "Complete honesty," Daniel agreed. "Starting with this. I'm falling in love with you. I don't know if it's too soon to say that or if it makes things weird, but I promised honesty." Lena's breath caught. "That's terrifying to hear." "I know. I think I might be falling in love with you too, but I don't trust it yet. I keep waiting for it to disappear." "It won't disappear. I won't disappear." He brought her hand to his lips again. "I'm here. For as long as you'll have me." They sat in the darkness, hands joined, not kissing or making promises they couldn't keep. Just being together. Just trying to believe that maybe, possibly, this could work. The months that followed weren't easy. There were awkward dinners with Catherine and Robert, who struggled to accept Lena but tried for Avery's sake. There were moments when Lena's old fears surfaced and she'd pull back, convinced it was all about to fall apart. There were late nights when Leo was sick and Lena was exhausted and Daniel was overwhelmed with work, and they'd snap at each other and have to learn how to fight fair and forgive. But there were good moments too. Avery and Leo's friendship blooming into something that looked like siblings. Lena finishing her degree in early childhood education, walking across the stage with Daniel and both kids cheering. Her first job as a teaching assistant at a preschool, coming home excited about curriculum and child development. Daniel's business growing because Lena's organizational skills freed him to take on bigger projects. Date nights at diners and parks, and eventually nicer restaurants, though they both agreed they preferred the places where crying children were welcomed. Family dinners with Monica and Tom, with Catherine and Robert slowly thawing. Leo's second birthday party in Monica's backyard, 20 kids running wild while the adults tried to maintain order. Small moments that added up to a life. Lena asked for time before they made it official, before they combined households completely. She needed to stand on her own first, to know she could make it independently before choosing to build something together. Daniel gave her that time, patient in a way he'd never been before. 8 months after she came back to Austin, Lena showed up at Daniel's house one evening after the kids were asleep. She stood on his porch, determination written across her face. "I'm ready," she said. "Ready for what?" "Ready to stop being scared. Ready to choose this. Choose us." She stepped closer. "I love you, Daniel Brooks. I love your daughter, and your patience, and the way you showed up when no one else did. I love that you never made me feel like a charity case or a burden. I love that you waited." Daniel pulled her into his arms, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling the rightness of her against him. I love you too. Have loved you since you apologized for bringing your baby to that restaurant and looked at me like you were bracing for the world to end. It kind of did end, Lena said against his chest. The old world, the one where I was alone and scared, and you helped me build a new one. They kissed on his porch, soft and sweet and full of promise. 2 months later, they moved in together, Lena and Leo into Daniel's house in Hyde Park. Avery gave up her playroom to become Leo's bedroom, declaring she was too old for a playroom anyway, and now she could have a real desk for homework. The house that had been too quiet for 3 years filled with the sounds of children playing, of Lena singing while she cooked, of family movie nights and homework battles, and the beautiful chaos of 4 people learning to be a family. A year after that first disastrous blind date at the Sterling Oak Steakhouse, Daniel married Lena in his backyard. It was a small ceremony, just Monica and Tom, Catherine and Robert, Lena's mother, a few close friends. Avery was the flower girl, taking her role incredibly seriously. Leo was the ring bearer, though he mostly tried to eat the rings until Lena gently redirected him. It wasn't fancy. There was no crystal or candlelight or polite judgment, just people who loved them, celebrating something that had been built from broken pieces and desperate hope, and the courage to keep showing up. When Daniel said his vows, he looked at Lena and saw her, really saw her. Not the struggling single mother from that first night, not the woman who'd run because she was too scared to stay. He saw his partner, his equal, the person who'd taught him that moving forward wasn't betraying the past. I promise, he said, his voice steady and sure, to show up every day, in the good times and the hard times, when you're strong and when you're scared. I promise honesty and patience and choosing you over and over again. Lena's vows were simpler. I promise to be brave, to trust that this is real, to build a life with you where no one ever has to apologize for showing up with a child in their arms. They kissed while Avery and Leo cheered and the small gathering applauded. Catherine was crying, but this time they were happy tears. Mrs. Ortiz was crying too, hugging Monica like they were old friends instead of women who'd met only months before. It was messy and imperfect and absolutely right. That night, after the guests had gone home and the kids were asleep, Avery in her room with its purple walls, Leo in his with his collection of trucks, Daniel and Lena sat on their back porch, the same porch where Daniel had spent so many nights alone, trying to figure out how to survive. We did it, Lena said softly. We actually did it. Built a family, Daniel agreed. The messy, complicated, beautiful kind. The kind where no one gets left behind, Lena added. Where showing up is enough. They sat in comfortable silence, hands joined, watching the stars appear over Austin. Inside, their children slept safe and loved. Around them, a whole network of people who'd chosen to show up, to help carry the weight, to prove that family wasn't just about blood or legality or fitting into someone else's definition. It was about choosing each other, every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. The night that had started with an apology in a fancy restaurant had led them here, to this porch, this life, this family. And neither of them would change a single moment of the journey because every difficult step had brought them exactly where they needed to be. Together. Finally, fully, completely together. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.